Yo, this is General Muti Ajamu-Osagboro. General is my title. Muti Ajamu-Osagboro is my name. This is the John Life is Real series, and we're bringing to you another in-depth expose of what's going on in our beloved city. What is your name? What is your association? Where are you physically at this very moment? And why are you here?
My name is Wanda Walker. I am a community activist, a small business owner, and a small landlord. I'm presently in my field office in Germantown. The purpose of this interview is to express how tenant advocates use tenants as pawns to steal generational wealth and weaponize the court system against small landlords.
Now, some of the things you told me about this story are just horrific. And folks really need to know what's going on in their city. Dealing with housing, dealing with land, and dealing with small business owners who own property. So we're going to start at the beginning, and we're going to try to make this as super short as possible, just so the people can get a good feel on the horrors that's going on within this field of endeavor, quote-unquote generational wealth. Tell the people what happened to you when you were dealing with someone who decided to not pay what they were supposed to pay.
Well, it pretty much started with the COVID. Once COVID hit and the courts were closed and police hands were tied, tenants started not paying rent because they knew you could not evict them. And one tenant in particular, I believe, was working with a realtor who wanted to force me to sell my property. And so therefore one tenant in particular, went to other tenants and was telling those tenants not to pay the rent. And from there, when it did not budge or move me, next, the tenants started vandalizing the building because all my licenses were up to date and proper. So by vandalizing the building, they would then call L&I in. L&I would write violations, and even if your licenses are good, you cannot do an eviction as long as you have violations.
And when they vandalize your property, you have to pay for that.
Most definitely. And one tenant went as far as to flood my building not once but twice. And on the second flooding, one was February, the other one was April, he did over $20,000 worth of damage. The first time I absorbed the cost and fixed it out of pocket. The second time I had to report it to my insurance company. They had to pay out for the repairs, and as a result, they canceled my insurance. Getting new insurance went up $5,000 a year. And so for the rest of my life as an owner of that building, I will be paying $5,000 more a year because of what a tenant did.
Talk about, A, this dude pulling a gun on you, and B, him confessing to a police officer that he was actually trying to extort you.
Yes, another tenant in the same building, the same time. This is all COVID after so many different things had happened. He decides to, and it was a setup actually. I came over to my building to pay one tenant to move, $800 cash for keys. And she had told me that she was ready, the apartment was empty, and she would be there. When I got there, I went up to the second floor, the door was cracked, her stuff was still there, it wasn't empty like she said, and she was nowhere to be found. So who do you know that's not going to be around when you're bringing $800 to pay them? As I come down the steps with another tenant, the tenant who pulled the gun comes out of his apartment and says, "Oh, you can come inspect my apartment." I had did an inspection April the 1st. This particular day, 6 days later, it was April the 6th. I go in and take 4 pictures very quickly and try to come out when he starts an argument with me. And he starts an argument with me over his girlfriend. And then he said, "If you send anybody to talk to me in reference to paying the rent, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill them too." He lifts up his shirt and he shows his gun. He does it a second time, and he lifts up the shirt and shows his gun. The third time he says, I'm going to kill them and I'm going to kill you. You're next. You're next. And he pulls the gun. He goes to pull the gun. As he's pulling the gun, I start backing out. 3 tenants saw this. There are 3 witnesses. One actually went and gave a statement to the police. The police, 2 weeks later, got whatever paperwork that's necessary to do a search. From my understanding, they did find the box for the gun gun receipt, but not the gun. They did not have a warrant to search his car where the gun probably was. This happened April the 6th. I then called the cops April the 7th, and the cops came out April the 7th and said they would arrest him. The cop went in to speak to the tenant, came out and said it's a landlord-tenant situation. I said, no, it's not, because a gun is involved. So I asked him to write a police report. Luckily for me, I went down to the 35th, come to find out, when I asked for my police report, they gave me the runaround. I had to go down there 3 times. The third time, I run into a white shirt, and he looks at the police report and he says, there's no mention of a gun. I said, I'm going to look like a fool because this tenant pulled the gun on me, and now I have to go file an emergency eviction. And so he made sure, he asked me, he said, well, do you want to file a complaint? I said, yes. For me to talk to internal investigation. He then asked me, do you want to talk to the captain? I said, the captain can contact me before AI does. Sure, no problem. So the next morning, the captain does contact me. She has me come in. She looks at the paperwork, the police report, and she states it was written incorrectly, that there's no mention of the gun. I tell her about the flooding. I tell her about the threat of the other tenant. While that tenant was pulling the gun, another tenant was threatening to punch me. It was a total setup because the whole time this is going on, 3 tenants are watching this, but the tenant that was actually supposed to be there to get the money is nowhere to be found.
Now, who took the statement that they left out the part about the gun?
The initial police officer who came out April the 7th, because the incident happened April the 6th. I backed up out of the building and left. And so I waited until the next day to call the cops to have them come out when I could have a friend escort me over to the building, and it was daylight.
Is this the same police officer that he talked to and told them that he expected a certain amount of money from you in order for him to move?
No. The police officer who he admitted that to was one of the detectives at the 35th. And once they brought him in from that, I guess, where they come and they go through your house and do the search, and they brought him in. And I believe that was April the 22nd. He admitted to the police officer / detective that he was extorting me for $11,000, requested that I give him $11,000 to move. Mind you, at this particular time, he was 8 months behind. And that's even after phase 1, 2, 3, 4 had paid at least 10 to 12 months of his rent. At this particular time, April 2022, he was literally 8 months behind.
What was the police officer's name?
The police officer that took the statement was Magoo.
Magoo in the cartoon?
Yes, I believe so. Magoo, something like that.
Oh, Magoo, you done it.
Yes.
All right.
And he was very nice. That detective was very nice, very thorough. And he said, he told me, he said, I can't believe he actually admitted extorting you for this money. And the reason he gave the police officer, because officer asked him, he said, well, I told her about phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. So she got $60,000, so she should break me off something. So he felt that the money that he thought I got, because I actually did not receive $60,000, I should have, but at that particular time, I had only received $20,000. And mind you, it was at least 5 tenants that weren't paying, and all of them owed at least 3 months to over 12 months worth of rent. And so $20,000 isn't anything, but in his mind, because he was so close with the CDC worker on 5th Street at G-Pass that was giving him insider information about my account, she was giving him information about how much money I'm supposed to have or be receiving, and he thought I had actually received it, and I had not.
All right, I'm trying to truncate this, so we speeding through because there's a lot being left out because there's a lot of moving parts. Talk about what happened when you went to court and the ADA did what he did and how he did what he did.
Well, this is the straw that broke the camel's back because the tenant only stayed in jail for 5 or 6 months, and that's with 3 witnesses and a witness statement. And from my understanding, he had 2 open cases across state line when he actually threatened me and pulled the gun on me.
And nobody gave you any reason as to how he was let out of prison?
No, not at all. I started getting robocalls with no phone call from the victim unit or anything, which I don't even know why they have a victims unit because I don't see anything they do. I started getting robocalls October the 17th. Now, mind you, he was arrested, I think, April the 22nd. By October the 17th, I'm getting robocalls stating that he's being let out.
All right, now let's fast forward because we running long. Now, when you got to court, the ADA, what's the ADA's name?
John Konchak, I believe.
John Konchak.
Yes.
Now, talk about what he did and how it made you feel in the manner in which he talked to you.
He called me. Now, when the tenant got out October 17th, that was 2022. The assistant DA did not call or contact me until February 27th, 2023. The phone call didn't last more than 5 minutes, if that. He told me who he was. He informed me that I had a court case coming March the 6th, which was in a few days, 8 days away, and that he had no information or papers in my file or any information on me. And I said, I don't know how, because there's a lot of information and a lot of paperwork. He then told me he would call me Monday. He confirmed, he said, we have court March the 6th, but I will call you first thing Monday.
Did he call you Monday?
He did not call me Monday. However, over the weekend, a robocall system kicked in and started calling, telling me that I had a court date, March the 1st. So apparently after he called me telling me he didn't have any paperwork on me, that he would call me Monday, and that we had a court case March 6th, he then called for an emergency court hearing for March the 1st and didn't bother to tell me.
So how did you find out?
Well, I go to court with 2 court witnesses, one on each side, and when the defendant, the tenant gets up, and
when you say defendant, you mean the one that pulled the gun?
Correct. And when they called his name, he went up front, and then I watched this assistant DA tell the judge that we're not having a jury, we're not having any type of court, no probation.
Stop right there. At that time, did ADA John Konchak know you were in the courtroom?
No, he did not. I was sitting in the back.
Continue.
And so he said the defendant or the tenant can go home today. And I said, excuse me?
When you said that, nobody knew who you were.
Correct. I said, what is going on? So the court security comes over and says, Miss, you can't yell out in court. I said, but I'm here. What is going on? I watched the judge. It was a female judge. She looked down at the paperwork and she raised her eyebrow as to say, what's going on? Because clearly someone with 2 open cases, pulling a gun, has a criminal record, and they get out in less than 6 months. Here, you're now saying that you're not going to have a court hearing, no type of probation, nothing. And meanwhile, John, the assistant DA, never met with me, to even tell me what was in my files. We didn't go over anything. And so afterwards, like I said, he turned around and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming." And he said, "Well, I'll talk to you when I finish." So he finished doing what he was doing that allowed the tenant to walk out of the courtroom that day.
The one who pulled the gun.
The one that pulled the gun. And then he took me to a private room. And I tried to take my 2 court watchers with me. And he said, "They can't come in." And I did not know that I could have said, "I want them with me." He takes me in the room, just me and him. And
now, what happened the moment he shut the door?
He started talking to me like I was something beneath his shoe. The number one question he asked before he said hi or anything, he questioned why I filed a complaint against a Judge Christina Hope 2 years before in landlord-tenant court.
What did that have to do with the proceeding?
It had nothing to do with this because this was not the tenant. And I've had problems with that particular judge more than once doing something other than what the law says is supposed to be done in court. So that's why I filed a complaint against her. And I then responded to him. I said, "What does that have to do with this case?"
So what, right then and there, what was going through your mind?
That he's more concerned, that there was malice in his heart, or he had malicious intent, that he was probably a friend or a family member of Christina Hope. And because I dared to exercise my rights as a citizen, that he then felt that I didn't deserve a fair trial or consideration.
So it was retaliation.
I believe so. And
did it feel like retaliation?
It did. And he literally then said to me, he said, you only mentioned a gun because you were trying to evict him. And I said, "Excuse you?"
So in essence, he's saying you lying.
Yes. And that let me know that he didn't look over any of the paperwork, because this particular tenant was notorious for always finding an agency, a church, or some type of program or grant to pay his rent ever since his girlfriend left. So he was never a problem, even though he was a slow payer, and he was now 8 months behind because the phase 4 had said they weren't paying anymore for him. So there was no reason for me to file an eviction on him. But once you pull a gun, there's a reason.
All right, well, let's speed it up. Now let's get to, just recently, you went to the district attorney's office and asked to speak to a supervisor because contract never got with you, never said anything, never contacted you. Did you get the name of a supervisor?
I did, but I can't. I wrote it down. And what is her name? Her name is. Can I read this? My own handwriting. That's not the right page. His supervisor, the direct supervisor for the assistant DA, is Angelina Bremen. I think.
Brennan.
Yes, Brennan. And I've called more than once, and I haven't gotten a response. Matter of fact, I've called, I think, 3 times now because I filed a complaint, and I actually went in physically to speak with someone. But of course, they were too busy, because the problem now is the tenant is literally trying to sue me $500 a day for every day he spent in jail, for pulling a gun on me and threatening me with a gun. And this is bananas, because there's a witness, there's a law firm. The first time he tried to do it, the first law firm said it was frivolous, so they wouldn't take it, or it got taught. Then he found another law firm that's slimy enough to actually try this. And this is how they're weaponizing the court system against small landlords to force us to sell our properties or lose. Because $500 a day equates to $350,000 for an actual crime that was committed in front of 3 people. And yet there's a law firm that's willing to take me through the ringer. And it all started because the assistant DA didn't do his proper due diligence. He didn't set up the paperwork right. He literally called me a liar. He accused me of filing or saying there's a gun and lying about a gun just to use it to evict a tenant. When in fact, if he had looked at my paperwork, he would have seen that I had never filed an eviction against this tenant, and it wasn't until after the tenant pulled the gun that I had to file an emergency eviction, because that's my life.
All right, if you were sitting right here in front of Larry Krasner, what would you ask him to do to rectify the situation?
Well, I did meet with Larry Krasner briefly, and I did explain to him briefly my case, and he did not like it at all. He seemed to be genuinely concerned, and the first thing he said is, we have to get you a pro bono lawyer.
But that's not what you want.
I do not want a pro bono lawyer. This has been going on for over 2.5 years. It is affecting my health, my sleep, and I want this to be over. I don't want to have to go to court to get in front of anybody or anything. This case should go away because it was built on lies, and it is being made possible because the assistant DA did not do his job, and he treated me with bias. And so I think that there should be some disciplinary action towards the assistant DA, because who else have you done this to? And I cannot forget, after he said what he said to me about me lying and only mentioning a gun to evict the tenant, I actually started tearing up, and I had to catch myself. And I asked him, I said, do you know who I am? I said, have you read my community bio? Because on my community bio, it lists all the organizations I'm affiliated with, that I volunteer for. My whole summary of my bio is about giving people housing that are low income or underprivileged, that have a hard time getting housing because people want to discriminate or judge them. And that happened to me when I first came out of college, and that's what made me want to be a landlord, to help people. And here this assistant DA is treating me like I'm nothing.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to be a community activist and help a whole lot of people. You deserve respect, decency, and your right to due process and equal protection, regardless of who you are.
Absolutely. But the fact that he said, yeah, and he said it real slick too. He was like, yeah, I read your bio. You'll be okay. I was like, wow. So that just shows you.
Do you think he possessed any amount of hatred towards you?
Yes, bias, hatred, discrimination, whatever you want to call it. I don't know his real relationship with Judge Christina Hope, but I plan on filing another complaint, because it's obvious if I have to go through all of what I'm going through, the fact that I can't afford a lawyer. I had to use a lawyer for the tenant who flooded my building twice. I had to use a lawyer for my PICO situation, which is a whole nother story. I can't keep paying lawyers, particularly when the lawyers don't even follow through and do good jobs. So I'm in a financial situation where I can't afford to pay a lawyer $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 to fight a case where they're asking for $350,000 when I didn't even do anything that deserves this type of treatment. I would ideally like to go after the law firm that is taking on this case, because I feel they've taken a case that they knew was not a case and shouldn't be a case, and they saw a small landlord that owns a property and they saw a payday. And there has to be some type of, I don't know, rule or regulation against that would maybe allow me to sue the law firm for the damages and the stress that they've caused me, because without them, he would not be able to do this to me.
All right, that's it. This is General Muti Ajamu-Osagboro signing off. I want to thank you for allowing me to do this interview, and we're going to give this to the people and let the people decide, you know, where we at and what can they do to rectify this situation, because clearly it's unjust. Hotep.
Hotep.
Kasi, freedom is work.